Hi, this is Pat Johnson, your psychology instructor, and in this mini lecture we're going to diagram a few classical conditioning situations so we can easily figure out the different parts of a classical conditioning scenario. And as a quick reminder, remember that the term US means unconditioned stimulus, UR is unconditioned response, CS is conditioned stimulus, and CR is conditioned response. And remember, conditioned equals learned, so unconditioned would mean not learned. As a reminder, let's diagram the Pavlovs dog example again. And if you remember, what Pavlov's dog learned to do was salivate. So our response is always the easiest thing to recall or to identify in any classical conditioning situation. So let's write down salivation. And let's label that as a response. Now ask yourself, what happened right before the salivation? Right before the salivation, the dog was presented food. So food caused salivation. Okay, so food caused salivation. And ask yourself, is food a stimulus or a response? And of course, food is a stimulus. And we abbreviate that with S. Now, food causing salivation, is that something we have to learn, or is it something that is naturally occurring in our bodies? Well, we don't have to learn to salivate to food, so food is an unconditioned stimulus causing an unconditioned response. Now remember, we're working backwards, so ask yourself, what preceded the food in the Pavlov's dog example? And what preceded the food was the noise or the bell. So the bell came first, and then we're going to put a plus sign because the bell was added to the food. The food came second, and then the dog salivated. That came third. And this happened a number of times. Bell plus food caused salivation. Bell plus food caused salivation. Bell plus food caused salivation. And then after a number of pairings, the bell alone caused salivation. And that's where the learning occurred, because the bell used to be neutral, and now the dog has learned that the bell means food is coming. So ask yourself, is bell a stimulus or a response? And of course, bell is a stimulus, and this used to be a neutral stimulus, and now the dog has learned that the bell means food is coming. So so learned is another word for conditioned. So bell is a conditioned stimulus, and salivation to the bell is a conditioned response. Okay, let's go on to another example that you haven't seen. In the mid-90s, I got into a serious car accident. I was driving down Highway 70 going towards Raleigh, and I was in the left-hand lane and a car was in the right-hand lane, and it decided to change lanes right into me without looking. And my car was thrown into the median. I ran over a sign, and the whole right side of my car was taken out. So it was a pretty serious accident. Now, right before that accident, I saw the car coming over out of the corner of my eye. So let's take a look at this and let's diagram it. So if you could ask yourself, what is Pat's response in this example? Well, my response is fear. There was a whole lot of fear. And again, fear is a response. And ask yourself, what originally caused that fear before there was any learning? What originally caused the fear was the car accident, or the crash, you might call it. And the accident was a stimulus, and the response was fear. Now, car accidents, serious car accidents causing fear, do we have to learn that that's scary? No, that's scary all on its own. So the accident would be an unconditioned or an unlearned stimulus causing an unconditioned response. Now, why is this classical conditioning? Because right before the accident, I saw the car cross the center line. So I saw the car cross the center line. About a half a second later, the car crashed into me, and I experienced fear. Cars approaching that center line never used to fear or cause me fear before. It used to be neutral. But now when a car crosses the center line, I experience intense fear. I really start feeling nauseous. So the car crossing the center line used to be neutral. Now it is a conditioned stimulus, and fear to cars crossing that center line is a conditioned response. So again, this is what happened first. This is what happened second. And I had fear, and now when cars cross the center line, I experience fear. Let's go on to another example. During World War II, the warning signal of battle stations would sound just before an enemy attack on Steve's ship. These enemy attacks were very frightening and caused Steve intense fear. Now, whenever Steve hears a sound like battle stations, he experiences intense fear and autonomic arousal. So where is our response? Well, here's our response right here. Steve is experiencing fear. So we're going to write that over here. Fear, and label it a response. And ask yourself, what initially caused Steve to have the fear? Well, that was the attack. The attack caused the fear, so attack is a stimulus, with fear being a response. Being afraid to an enemy attack does not have to be learned. That is naturally something that's very scary. So this would be an unconditioned stimulus and an unconditioned response. And then what happened right before the enemy attack? The sound of battle stations. So we're going to write battle stations. Battle stations, when he first got on the ship before he experienced enemy attacks, that would have probably have been neutral. So that would have been our conditioned stimulus, but you hear battle stations enough times and you get attacked and you experience fear. Pretty soon, just when you hear battle stations, you experienced fear. So fear to battle stations would be our conditioned response. And again, battle stations happen first, then the enemy attack. Fear to the enemy attack, pair that enough times, and now there is fear just to the sound of battle stations. Our next example, Rover, and Rover was an old name for a dog. So Rover the dog always got car sick when riding in a car. In spite of this, his family insisted on taking him along on vacations. It got to the point that just seeing a suitcase would make Rover a little queasy. So first pick out the response. What is Rover's response? Well, Rover is feeling queasy. So we're going to write down our response, and we'll write down queasiness. And we know that's a response. And what originally caused the queasiness? Well, that would be the car ride. The dog has car sickness, and the car ride caused queasiness, so car ride would be a stimulus. And that's not something that we have to learn. For some of us, we get car sick naturally when we're in cars, so that would be an unconditioned stimulus causing an unconditioned response. But it got right before he would get in the car, he would see the suitcase. So what preceded the car ride was seeing suitcase. So we have seeing a suitcase, and then would be the car ride and queasiness, and now when he just sees a suitcase, he has queasiness. So suitcases used to be neutral. Now he has learned that suitcases mean car rides are coming, and he gets queasy from car rides, so just seeing suitcases causes queasiness. And so queasiness to seeing suitcases would be the conditioned response. And for our last example, one day at the beach, Jean found a little store that sold particularly good ice cream. Since then, she has eaten ice cream dozens of times at that store, and now whenever she sees the store, she starts to salivate and feel pleasure. So here's our response right here, salivation and feeling pleasure. So we'll say salivation and pleasure. So let's have a little fun and show Jan smiling and drooling. So what initially caused the salivation and pleasure? That would have been the ice cream, right? So ice cream. And we don't have to know that ice cream's good. We know that already. We salivate to food, so this would be our unconditioned response and our unconditioned stimulus. And what happened before she saw the ice cream? She would see the store. So, seeing the store, and then she would have ice cream and salivation and pleasure. Pair that enough times, so now the store alone causes salivation and pleasure. We label store conditioned stimulus because that used to be neutral, and salivation and pleasure just to the store would be our conditioned response. So again, the store came first, then the ice cream, then salivation and pleasure. Pair that enough times, and now just when she sees the store, she experiences salivation and pleasure. So that's our classical conditioning examples. You will be able to put any classical conditioning situation into that type of diagram. And again, remember, only involuntary responses can be classically conditioned.